Isn't it? Chris Cornell, last hour's breakdown. Let us pray. Dear Lord, let us find the truth. Forgive us our sins. We acknowledge your Son, Jesus Christ. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, I'm going to break down the Reels documentary that aired last Sunday, but first, we're going to take a look at this. It's one of Brett the Punk Ass's posts, handed hot off the presses, right from the Black Widow, I'm sure, because of what it says. This is from the 15th, and I'm going to start with this, and then I'm going to go into some points about the documentary that was on last Sunday. We watched it on live stream and discussed. It was fun. Anyway, Chris Cornell alcoholism detailed on autopsy. Grunge was loaded with alcohol. On Autopsy, The Last Hours of Chris Cornell, which premiered on Sunday on the Reels channel, there's a discussion of Cornell's alcoholism he dealt with up until his 2002 stint in rehab. Dr. Michael Hunter said in interviews, Chris revealed that he started drinking at the age of 16, and his alcohol consumption became particularly heavy during his 20s and 30s. Former 90s grunge band Sad Happy drummer, who the fuck is that? Evan Schiller said, Schiller, how appropriate. I think that the grunge era was definitely loaded with a lot of alcohol. It was part of the culture. I would say it's just part of the rock culture. Alcohol, drugs. I mean, is that a big fucking revelation from Mr. Schiller? Former Tad bassist Kurt Danielson, who the fuck is that, said it was all pervasive. It was everywhere all the time. We played our shows in bars, so there was drinking. When you tour from one bar to the next. I think that's pretty well known that rock bands start out in rock clubs or bars and go from bar to bar to tour. Journalist Matt Dial said, one thing that really surprised me interviewing Chris is he literally drank more than any human being I've ever seen in my entire life. Bullshit. I think we talked for about 4 or 5 hours, and I think he drank about a bottle of champagne per hour. There's people a lot worse than that, trust me. Dr. Linda Papadopoulos said, Chris's parents were alcoholics, so alcoholism addiction is something that he grew up seeing all around him. It's very likely that a young child sees that as an appropriate way of coping. What about the cocaine use he was seeing by the Black Widow? Did that affect him at all, I wonder? And that's alleged cocaine use. I want to make that very clear. And here's what I really wanted to get to. Near the end of the special, Dr. Michael Hunter said he believed a combination of prescription drug issues and depression may have contributed to Cornell's death. No, he did not say that. He did not say that. Here's what he really said. His successful rehabilitation in 2002 and commitment to his family are testaments to his strength of spirit and desire to live a full and happy life. While Chris bravely faced a number of psychological challenges throughout his life, I cannot completely rule out his history of depression, along with the role of prescription meds, as being one of a number of factors which could have affected Chris's thought process and decision making. While it's hard to know what exactly caused Chris Cornell to tragically take his own life, there is a chance his judgment may have been impaired, which increased the likelihood of self-harm. He does not say, in my opinion, it was depression and drugs. He takes a look at depression and drugs, and prescription meds to be exact, and says, I can't completely rule it out. That is weak as fuck. And that is not what they tried to put forth directly ahead of the quote, hoping people wouldn't read past the quote. Not that most people would understand it anyway. But again, near the end of the special, Michael Hunter said he believed a combination of scripts and depression may have contributed to Cornell's death. No, he says he can't rule it out, which is about the weakest determination I can think of, besides just saying it had nothing to do with it. Which is what I say. Depression had nothing to do with it. Prescription meds had nothing to do with it. And you're going to see another quote in my breakdown or a paraphrasing from Dr. Hunter, which shows what he really thinks. And that's the end of the lovely propaganda piece, article. Now, what did we see in the Reels documentary last Sunday night? Dr. Hunter, in segment 1, he's done 5,000 autopsies, therefore he must be good, right? He talks about Chris's life. I've said this many times, a lot of us have said this. Great career and family life, no apparent reason for suicide at first glance. In other words, the guy's career was doing great. Allegedly, all the info we were getting, his family life was great. He was happy, blah, blah, blah. We know that now that the family life thing, as far as him being happy in the last couple years, or many years, could go back like 10 years, was not good. He was not enjoying it. Look at his song lyrics. But for someone that doesn't know much, when you first looked at his life, hey man, the guy's got money, he's got a great career, he's married, he's got a kid. It's like Chester. Why would he kill himself? He wouldn't. We know that now. Segment 1, Chris doesn't look like someone whose body was compromised by years of excess. Looks like healthy 52-year-old. The reason I wrote that down is because throughout this whole fucking documentary, they're looking at shit Chris did 20 years, or 30 years before his death. Fucking irrelevant. Yet in the beginning he says, Chris doesn't look like someone whose body was compromised by years of excess. Excess as in drug use, alcohol use, the whole rock star thing. Looks like a healthy 52-year-old. He went into the family history a bit and career history. Then they brought up it talks of Chris sending Mother's Day messages to Tony and Vicky. Talks of the love for the K family and his new family after he divorced Susan and all that. We all know that that's bullshit. Talks of Chris's real parents being alcoholics and no Mother's Day message for his real mother, Karen. They interjected that several times in the documentary. That the relationship with his real family really wasn't that great. But he loved the K's. Bullshit. Bullshit. And they portrayed Chris's parents as nothing more than alcoholics in the documentary. They barely said anything more than that. That they were alcoholics. That is bias in my opinion. I'm sorry. And that's one indicator. Although I said many times, Vicky does not want people to see this. I can tell she must have threatened a lawsuit or something by what's said in the doc. Basically straight up disses Chris's real family, his real mother, real father, all that. And talks about how great the K's are and how great that part of his life was. Bullshit. Oh, and the Mother's Day thing. Someone made a good point in the last video. Just because Chris didn't put a tweet up for his mother doesn't mean he didn't call, didn't do something, contact her in some way, say Happy Mother's Day in some way. We have no idea. And they made the point that Chris's real parents aren't really the social media freaks that VK and TK are. So just because there's no fucking tweet saying Happy Mother's Day, Karen, or to my real mom, doesn't mean shit. And who knows if Chris even wrote the fucking Mother's Day tweets to fucking Tony and Vicky. Who the fuck knows? Because they sound very contrived. Then they segue into Chris's alcohol use, attempting to tie it into Chris's death. But autopsy shows heart and liver are healthy. Yes, if you remember on the autopsy, you saw the word unremarkable, which means everything looks normal. You saw that over and over again. Unremarkable, unremarkable, unremarkable. And then he says, Dr. Hunter, no alcohol on tox. You're going to see this theme throughout the whole entire fucking show. He'll talk about a subject, alcohol, certain drugs, whatever, head wound, whatever. Then when you go to the report or the tox, it ain't fucking there. Fucking irrelevant then. Fucking irrelevant. Over and over irrelevance was basically the whole show. Segment 2 Talks of Chris spending Mother's Day with Tony and Vicky and the kids. Then it goes into marijuana and psychedelic use at age 12 or early teen years for Chris. Tries to tie that in. Talks about LSD and PCP use or angel dust use around 14, early teen years. Angel dust at 14. He had a bad trip. All of a sudden now he's agoraphobic. Yet he was a rock star from, his late teens to fucking the day he died. So I ain't buying the agoraphobia thing whatsoever. That's also irrelevant in my opinion, since the guy could get up on stage and sing in front of thousands of people whenever the fuck he felt like it. And then we go back to the talks at the end of that segment, and what does he say? None of these drugs are on the tox report. Irrelevant. Shit that happened 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Fucking irrelevant. Segment 3, they go into Chris's history of depression and dark lyrics. And the idiot friend says happiness and smiling was not Chris's thing. Okay, that's ridiculous. And he doesn't sound like much of a friend to me, or even someone that, knew Chris at all. It also goes into Chris's depression may have started 20 years prior to his death. Do you see the theme here? They keep going back to years and years and years ago. It couldn't have anything to do with the K family he recently got involved with, right? No, we have to go back 20 and 30 years back to when, he was with his other family, his real family. That's where the problems are. That's what led him initially to kill himself in 2017, right? I don't fucking think so. They talk about song titles fell on black days, like Suicide, Pretty Noose. And that one, like Suicide, that's Love's Like Suicide. Okay? He's talking about love, and love is like suicide. Oh my god. Great song, by the way. So it goes into, the dark song titles and lyrics. Therefore, that's an indicator of Chris's depression. And then he talks about Chris not taking antidepressant meds increases chance of risky behaviors or suicide, can't rule out depression. Again, it couldn't have been anything that started, when he got involved with the K family. It has to be depression that started back when he was fucking, 14, 12. And then he goes to the talks. No antidepressants on talks. More irrelevance to the report and to what actually happened. Then they go into Chris's alleged addiction to OxyContin, oxycodone, whatever you want to fucking call it, and his breakup with Susan, and then a 2002 stint in rehab in Malibu. Again, those drugs weren't on the tox. Despite lion-ass Black Widow saying, maybe I thought he may have been on Oxy. Gee, that detail didn't come out till what? A year later? That detail? All of a sudden Oxy gets mentioned. Segment 4, and what I mean by segments is in between commercials, okay? That's what I'm doing here. Shoulder injury in 2013, Chris sustained. Then they talk about butalbital. And what he basically says about butalbital in the end is, concentration of butalbital was low, not at addict levels, not convinced drug was being abused. What did I say in my 41 nanograms video? What did I say in my butalbital video? What have I been saying since the beginning of this? The drugs on the tox are low levels. Now you have a world-renowned medical examiner agreeing with my thesis. I find that fascinating. Segment 4, Martin escorts Chris to hotel, gives Chris 2 Ativan. Was Ativan a sleeping aid? We all know that Chris was allegedly taking Ativan because of his shoulder injury, because that hindered his sleep. So he needed something to help with that. It goes into the Chris and Vicky phone call the night Chris died. They mentioned the house lights flickering, the app on your phone that can flicker your lights at home if you have it. Well, Chris had it. And we heard that way early in the narrative that Chris allegedly flickered the lights using his phone. So they mentioned this in a documentary. I was really surprised. The problem with that flicker is it took place when Chris was on stage. And we've discussed that before. That's a problem. We've discussed the possibility of that light flickering being an indicator from Kirsten saying, we're going to go ahead and do this tonight. Here's your signal, Black Widow. Make sure the checks are good. Anyway, so they mentioned the light flicker, and Chris says on the phone, I took 2 Ativan. They end up arguing. They did not use the quote from Vicky that he may have taken an extra Ativan or 2. And when we look at the talks, we know he didn't take an extra Ativan or 2. So there's the proof right there. And who figured that out? I think it was a cracker on YouTube in a video called 41 nanograms per milliliter. But, you know, again, I'm just a cracker in a hotel room. Who the fuck do I know? Anyway, Vicky calls back, tells Martin to check on Chris because she's worried. Martin calls hotel staff because doors are locked, Chris's hotel room door. Staff offers no help. Martin kicks in door at Vicky's request. Bedroom door is locked. Once he gets inside the room, Martin calls hotel staff a second time. Does that sound real to you? Calls Vicky twice, actually, too. And that's when Vicky told him to kick in the door. That's at least what the documentary said. So this dude made 4 phone calls in this process. Does that sound realistic to you? Not to me. Sounds like bullshit. So, after Martin calls the hotel staff a second time and tells them to call emergency services, and they offer him no help, Martin kicks in the bedroom door. The documentary claims it took Martin 6 kicks to knock the door down. I don't know where the fuck they got that info from. I doubt Kirsten gave it to him. Finds Chris on the bathroom floor, bathroom door partially open. Then they go into the head wound and possible concussion. Then segment 5, they expound on the head wound theory, which again didn't come out, at least from their camp, from the Black Widow camp, until almost a year later, out of bloody desperation. All of a sudden she's mentioned in the head wound. So when they go into it in segment 5, they play the EMT call where he calls it in, suggests possible head injury. And then Hunter says what I've been saying for a while. Common for scene responders to suggest injuries that upon a further examination don't exist. In other words, a scene responder, the first people to get there, they might be doing an assessment from a distance, standing over the body, not really a close assessment, not on a table, not looking at everything closely. So even world-renowned Michael Hunter says the same thing. And if the head wound did exist, I believe it happened in the hotel room, not on stage. No way dude's doing a concert with a concussion and a bleeding head. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. The medical examiner also says lighting conditions in concert photos are inconclusive, or the photos are inconclusive because of lighting conditions. That's what I said for almost a year. Until those miraculous all black and white photos came out. Out of nowhere, almost a year later, crystal clear. In black and white, though. Gee, I wonder why. I told so many people that the lighting in the photos you're sending me of Chris on stage make it impossible, and the blurry nature of the photos make it impossible for me to say that, yeah, that's a head wound, when the lighting's all red, all around them, washing him in the color red. And how do I know the effects of stage lighting? Because I worked like right next to it while guys were hanging those lights and testing them out. And I've seen many concerts. It bathes you in that color. So no, I don't think he had a head wound on stage. But it's just funny that this world-renowned medical examiner said the same things I've been saying for a long time, that scene responders might suggest an injury that doesn't exist because it's not a close-up examination, that the lighting conditions at the concert make the photos inconclusive. And then he goes back to the report again. No head injury on autopsy report. It seems like almost every single fucking thing Dr. Hunter talked about, when you go to the report, it ain't fucking there. Irrelevant. Irrelevant. Then we go to Ativan, lorazepam for sleep that Chris was allegedly taking. Vicky believed Chris became addicted to lorazepam. That they put that statement out there in the Reels documentary, that Vicky believed she was dealing with an ex-addict in Chris Cornell, and that Chris became addicted to lorazepam, and Chris should have been monitored, and that he took, in a 7-day period, he took 20-something pills, and in a 9-day period, he took 33. And then there's Chris's email to a friend, need to talk, had relapse. And remember, that email didn't come out for a long time either. That alleged Chris Cornell email, need to talk, had relapse. And always remember, several other people had access to Chris's accounts, especially the Black Widow, no matter what it was. And what it comes down to in the toxicology, as I showed in my 41 nanograms per milliliter video, nothing in Chris's system was at addict levels. That's exactly what I wanted to show. Were the levels therapeutic? Were they addict levels? Were they overdose levels? Were they toxic levels? I spent days and days on that. Funny. And here it is. Probably should have waited to say that till after this. This is what the doctor says towards the end. It's clear Chris went through a period of addiction to lorazepam. No, that's not clear. All we have is the Black Widow's word. Nothing else. Nothing else. Yet on the tox, levels were not high. 41 nanograms per milliliter, well within therapeutic range. Also, the bodyguard was holding meds and administered them. Dosage was being controlled. Have I not said all these things for so long? These exact things. And I didn't even have to go to fucking medical school. On the tox, when it first came out, we looked at it, me and my people, and we realized the levels were low as fuck. So he didn't die because he was in some drug-induced fucking delirium, and he wasn't an addict, no matter what the Black Widow was trying to say all this time. And then, again, the doctor says 41 ng, well within therapeutic range. What did I say in my video, 41 nanograms? It was within therapeutic range. What also have I been saying? Because Vicky keeps loves to throw out there, Chris should have been monitored, and he should have only been on this drug for a few weeks, and this drug can be dangerous. Well, it seems the Black Widow knew the drug could possibly be dangerous to some people, a recovering addict, whoever. That's why she had Mr. Kirsten holding the medication. So in other words, they knew the risks going in. They knew the risks going in. So, the quote I read you in the beginning, which I'm going to read you again if my phone doesn't shut off due to length of video. First, I'm going to read you this quote again, and then I'm going to read the shill quote again, pulled out of context. It's clear Chris went through a period of addiction to lorazepam. No, it's not clear. Yet on the tox, levels were not high. In other words, what the doctor is saying is he wasn't an addict that night. After saying, well, it was clear that he went through a period of addiction. No, it's not. And even the night he died, no, it's not clear at all. Well within therapeutic range. Levels were not high, 41 nanograms per milliliter, well within therapeutic range. What does that tell you? And then we'll see Brett's or Vicky's shill-ass quote, or their piece of writing. Near the end of the special, Dr. Michael Hunter said he believed a combination of prescription drug issues and depression may have contributed to Cornell's death. Actually, all he said was, I can't rule it out. That's all he said, and that's weak as fuck. What he's saying here is actually based on some fact. And again, I'm going to remind you, I've been saying the same fucking things. I didn't have to go to medical school. I didn't have to do 5,000 fucking autopsies. It's just looking at the numbers. That's all. And we knew from day one when the tox came out that the levels were very low. Not overdose levels, not addict levels. And then, somewhat recently, I did the 41 nanograms per milliliter video and spent many days figuring that out. How many pills did he really have in his system? What were the levels at? So something else Hunter says at the end, depression was not being managed with drugs. So Dr. Hunter's thesis is, really, in my opinion, after watching the whole thing several times, it was depression that most likely killed him, going back to his teenage years. And his depression was not being managed by drugs. So therefore, that would have made him more suicidal, more risky in his behavior. I think that's total bullshit. I know a lot of people that have killed themselves on antidepressants or with them in combination with other drugs. Doesn't necessarily solve a damn thing. Can make it worse. Everybody remember Prozac? Zoloft? You remember that shit? But anyway, you had to wait a year for a world-renowned medical examiner to basically say a lot of the same things I said as far as the tox report goes, as far as the first scene responders go, as far as the head wound goes. Things you can actually base on real fact, on real evidence, other than a shite narrative by the K family. And please, people, don't neglect the PayPal. A lot of work went into this. And we keep having our information verified over and over and over again. And our effectiveness verified over and over and over again. Because the people with intellect, they come here. They don't go anywhere else. They bring their information here as far as video goes. There are some good people doing some good work, great work on other outlets. But as far as video, the people with intellect come here. So again, please, let's try and keep this going. Don't neglect the PayPal. And for the millionth time, I think we've proven our effectiveness. And Dr. Michael Hunter just proved it again, as far as when you look at the reports and things that can be based on anything real. But I'm glad Dr. Hunter concurs with my opinion that 41 ng per milliliter is within therapeutic range and not addict levels. And he basically straightforward said he may have went through a small period of addiction, but the night of his death, the levels were way too low. They're not addict levels. Exactly what I've been saying for so long. Anyway, peace be ever with thee.